Hello guys, it's Antonio, and today I'm doing a Raspberry Pi tutorial with my dad on how to block ads using the Raspberry Pi.
So we're protecting our home as well as reducing the ads and reducing traffic using a Raspberry Pi. So we're going to start with a little background information about the Raspberry Pi. These are mini computers, been available for almost 10 years, and they're used for various projects, Internet of Things, and also now with the latest Raspberry Pi 4 desktop replacement. But for today's subject, we're going to focus on ad blocking using one of the projects called Pi-hole. So any Raspberry Pi will do. We're going to start with some information about the various products we have for Raspberry Pi. I'm going to scroll down the products, and roughly it started generation 1, and there's different revisions and model numbers, from model 1 to model 2 back to model 0, which is a very small factor, and the latest then model 3 and model 4. So any of these will work. For our network, we just happen to have an old model Pi 2 Model B laying around, so we use this for our Pi-hole. The letter B stands for having an internet connection. This project can easily be done using a Raspberry Pi Zero W, which has wireless, or a Raspberry Pi Zero, but then you'll need a Ethernet port or some means of connecting. So, as I said, we're using a Raspberry Pi 2, and the first thing we do is install the operating system. So I'm going to Downloads, and I'll show you the process. We'll be using the Raspberry Pi Imager, so that's downloading right now, and we're going to install it. We're going to step you through the process, but I'm going to skip a few steps since we already have the operating system on our micro SD card. So this software imager takes an image of the operating system and saves it to the micro SD card via a reader. So we're going to open it up. And install. And we're going to run the Raspberry Pi Imager. And I'm going to show you very simple steps. So you choose the operating system you want to install, or you could manually install it. In this case, we can install the Raspberry Pi OS or another version of it. And if we go into, this is the full-blown version with the desktop, and there's a light version as well. And the light version will be useful if you will be only connecting to it via headless, meaning without a video monitor, connecting via SSH, or you want to use a other version of the operating system. Because we're using a Pi 2, it's not going to work too well or fast with the full version, and I wanted a desktop version, so I did not use the Lite. I used the version that was in between this version. So you select an operating system you want to use. Like I said, the Lite, the regular desktop, or the full-blown. In this case, we're selecting the one in the middle. And then you select the hard drive, you select the card reader where your micro SD card is. After you select it, make sure you select the correct one. Preferably it's already all formatted and erased. And all you do is, after selecting it, hit the right button. We're not going to do this at this point since we already have that installed in our Raspberry Pi. So let's continue forward. So what does the operating system look like? Well, let's see if there's a view of it. Actually, we're going to skip that. So here is if you downloaded the files directly, the 3 different versions, and wanted to install and unzip it yourself instead of using the imager. There's other imagers that can be used. A popular one is called Etcher, but I think we're perfectly fine using the built-in Raspberry Pi imager. Okay, so then we have a Raspberry Pi. We have an operating system on it. You would boot up your Raspberry Pi using that operating system, and you will end up either in a terminal mode or the desktop mode. And that could take several minutes for the first boot for it to set up the system. I maybe will create a separate video at some point in time showing that, but at this point we're going to jump into what we do next with the Pi-hole. What's a Pi-hole? So that's what we're going to use to block ads on our network. It doesn't block everything, but if you go to the site, it'll walk you through the steps, and it's very easy to use. Step number 1 is installing the operating system. Pi-hole can be installed on Ubuntu Mate, on the Raspbian OS that we just did, and other versions of Linux as well. Installing Pi-hole is going to be very simple, and we're going to do that next. And it's a very simple one-line install. But before we get to that, we have to install and use PuTTY. Okay, so PuTTY is going to be used as our SSH client. This is a way to go directly into the Raspberry Pi over the network and not using it connected to a monitor. And we're going to download the installer. I'm going to run it. And this site will always include the latest versions. There's multiple versions, multiple companies that sell SSH clients. We're going to be using PuTTY, which is the most common free source one. And that's it. And we're on PuTTY. We're going to go into the Raspberry Pi, and it will have a unique address. For your network, it could be a different number, but we set it up under this IP address on our local network, 192.168.0.10. And now we're going to trust the host, and we're going to continue forward. I'm going to log in. And we're inside the Raspberry Pi right now. So going back to our website for the Pi-hole, and all you do is select the URL, copy it, and in here, just do a right click and it'll paste it in. This will take several minutes to run. I will not do that right now because we've already installed the Pi-hole. You will see some prompts regarding the installation. I will step you through that in an alternate video, which will show more details, but we're just doing a quick review at this point. And the main thing you'll be setting up is preferably you'd want to set a static IP address, which I did on my Pi-hole, which is 192.168.0.10. And then once everything's configured and installed, and you want to run that service also on startup, and there's instructions here about that, all you need to do is go to the address from any browser in your network. The port that's used is 1880. And we're going to go into, sorry, 10. Actually, we're going to go to the main. Okay, so this is the main screen for the Pi-hole. And we've already configured all the default settings in order to log in. And we don't have a secure login here, so and the password is saved elsewhere, so we're not going to log in at this point. But we would be typing in the password that's generated when you install the Pi-hole on the last screen of the installation. And then you would get different ways of setting which black lists or white lists you want to use for your ad blocking. I used the defaults. Okay, now we're up to step 3. So we've installed the operating system. We installed the Pi-hole. I'm not showing any details about configuring it. The defaults is what I've used as well. The last is bypassing the DNS and or pointing it to the correct spot. So there's two ways of doing this. We can configure our router to go to the Pi-hole instead of your ISP DNS sites, or you can configure each of your devices to go to the site. If your router allows you to configure it, it is the better option, and it will cover all connections at your house. And this is what we've done at our home. So we'd log in into your router. In our case, it is 192.168.0.1. It could be 1.1 for your site, for your home, for your router. And then you would find information regarding the LAN, advanced LAN connections. And your ISP normally has a DNS1 and DNS2 entry. You would zero out the DNS2 entry and a DNS3 entry if there one exists. And then for your static DNS1 entry, you would replace that with the IP address of your Pi-hole. In our case, it would be 192.168.0.10, which I've shown on the screen before. And let's see if there's any other steps. We haven't set up step 4 yet. You can actually set up a VPN where you can log in and use the Pi-hole with your mobile devices, but we have not done that yet. But that will be one of our future projects. That's it for now. There probably will be a separate video showing all the details. I will step through every step using a Raspberry Pi Zero in the next video.